Hi, I'm 2021 Why Not Cam Awards winner Chelsea Poe. I'm here to tell you about my cam studio, Treasure Cams. Treasure Cams is a performer-led webcam studio owned by queer porn star Bella Vendetta. We welcome all 21 plus models who want to earn a paycheck from home as cam performers. We're open to all body types, genders, persuasions, and presentations. You get access to our performer-only forums, monthly team meetings, as well as help with promotion and marketing. For customers, check out treasurecams.com to see all of our models, schedules, and photos. treasurecams.com. Have you ever been looking for an amazing queer cam performer? Well, I got you covered. You should check out TS Cami. Her super hot content is on Chatterbait, Twitter, Xhamster, and Reddit. Support this rad trans femme babe. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special AVN week of the Performers Pod. I'm Chelsea Poe, and today I'm here with 2025 AVN Award nominee Goddess Lilith. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So first off, congrats on your nominations. You're
Thank
nominated
you.
for at least two that I found. You're nominated for Best Femdom and Best Niche Performer. Are there
Yes.
more?
I think so yeah, the best niche performer is like an AVN nomination from AVN
Yeah.
itself, and then the favorite femdom is like the fan voting one.
Well, that's huge. I mean, two nominations whenever you're like entering
Um,
a award show week and you have multiple nominations, I feel like it really gives like a different kind of vibe, where you're like,
Yeah, for
I'm really,
sure.
really here.
Right. You feel almost like you have like sort of an overarching purpose to be there. Like,
For
you do the
sure.
trade show and stuff like that, and you see your friends and you network, but then you're like, I'm gonna rock that red carpet, baby.
How many AVNs have you been to? I don't think this is your first, right?
No, I haven't counted, but I think that this is probably my sixth or seventh, and it's at least my fifth as a nominee.
Wow. So we've both been here for a minute now.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, what year was your first year?
Let's see. My first year was actually definitely before I started getting nominations and definitely before I moved to Las Vegas. So I want to say my first AVN was probably in 2017 or so.
Okay, cool. That's pretty close. Yeah, my first one was 2015. So I've seen
Nice.
the industry change quite a bit at this time.
For sure. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people come and go, a lot of companies come and go, a lot of startups start up and fail, and
For sure. So when did you have your first nomination?
my first AVN nomination, let's see, I think that was probably 2018 or
Okay.
2019, something like that. It's a little hard to
Nice.
remember with the gap of the pandemic in there, but I think it was 2018.
It is so crazy, like having the experience before the pandemic when the industry was so different
Right, yeah.
to what it is now, where I feel like there was such a bigger divide between like cam girls and porn, and I feel like now everyone kind of does everything.
Yeah, definitely. And also just there's been a lot more sort of normalization about things like OnlyFans.
Yeah.
It's like most kind of young women during the pandemic turned towards things like that. And I know that for sure because a lot of my friends who were in completely different walks of life started sliding into my DMs being like,
Yeah.
hey Lilith, so I'm starting an OnlyFans, or I want to start like doing foot modeling, and like, how do you do this kind of thing? And so there was such a large volume of that's when I decided to write my ebook about foot modeling in 2020. And the rest is kind of history from there. It ended up winning an alt porn award, and now I have a YouTube channel with content focused on how to kind of stuff for aspiring creators, and it's really nice because I really like knowing that I'm helping people out there, and also sort of like demystifying the thing a little bit too, because as you know, a lot of people think it's super easy to get into the industry
Yeah.
and they're just going to be like, "Oh, I'm doing porn now," or like, I'm going to start up, slinging foot pics on the internet." And it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it's never as easy as just turning on your webcam and oh my God, I'm a porn star now.
Right.
It's
Wouldn't that be nice if it did work that way?
right. So I first met you. I feel like we've known of each other for a long time.
Mhm.
Are you from Boston specifically or somewhere else in Massachusetts?
Yeah, so I grew up just outside of Boston in the like North Cambridge, Arlington area.
Okay.
And I was born and raised there. I lived there for my whole life up until my mid 20s when I moved to Providence and lived there for a bunch of years and started up a dungeon down there. And yeah, it was a few years after that that I was sort of like, okay, I'd like to do bigger things with my career now. And New England has a pretty low ceiling, as you know.
Yeah.
So so then right before the pandemic was when I came out here to Vegas. And of course, that was just wonderful timing, let me tell you. I got here, I was just kind of gotten settled in after a couple months of being here, and then it was boom, lockdown. So that was fun and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I got to New England is so bizarre because I'm originally from the Midwest. I never had
Okay, where are you
any.
from?
I'm originally from the small town in Michigan named Holland. So
Okay.
it's a complete Dutch community, but it's in the Midwest. So we have
Okay,
like
nice.
windmills, we have the world's largest tulip festival, we have signs in Dutch. Like
Oh, cool.
it's a very strange thing because especially moving to California, I thought everywhere in the United States was kind of like that. And then I learned very quickly, I'm like, I'm not that American. I'm very Dutch. So but when I started doing mainstream porn, all my gigs were in Massachusetts. We're like in Cape Cod, we're in Martha's
Really?
Vineyard. Yeah, very
That's
strange.
fascinating.
And then I started working with Bella Vendetta in Western Massachusetts. So I really got to know most of the state. I got to know most of like the neighboring states. So my whole porn career really ran through New England in the early part. And everyone, I'm sure you might have a different view of New England than I do, but I'm like everyone, despite being very loud and very like boisterous,
Mm.
everyone was very, very kind and very nice. And I
Mm.
very much felt like a second or third home there where I'm like, oh wow, this is a place I can really identify with and stuff.
Nice.
So I feel like that's how we got on each other's radar because
Yeah.
I knew you were either somewhere in New England doing some sort of BDSM. And I'm like, oh, wow, great. It's part of like the larger community. And then I think we
Yeah.
first met at the Why Not Cam Awards when you were
Hmm.
doing the red carpet there. And I
Yeah.
had a moment when you're like, oh no, I know you from this. I was like, oh my God, I know you from
Yeah.
this too.
Yeah, well, I think I first became aware of you. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I started running a femdom event in New England called Exalted, and
Oh yeah.
I featured Bella a couple of times, and I was like, "Hey, do you have any like of your DVDs that you want to like run during the event? Because we had screens and stuff like that." And she brought a couple over, and one of them was The Training of Poe. And so
Yeah.
that was when the first time that I got to watch that. And I was just like, wow, this is super cool. And I just remember thinking that you were super fucking badass. And like,
Aw,
I admired your work like as soon as I saw it. And so then
very sweet.
when we met up on the red carpet, I was like, oh my God, I'm interviewing Chelsea Poe. Like, this is super fucking cool. And I knew that you were, I didn't know exactly if you were like based in New England or not, but like I knew that we at one time sort of were both hailing from there. So it was
Yeah.
extra cool to be meeting up with you on the other side of the country.
Yeah, I would definitely. I was not expecting to see you there because I was like, "Oh, New England BDSM."
Mhm.
That's the last thing I'm thinking of when I'm on a red carpet in Hollywood,
Right.
where I'm like,
Right.
"Oh yeah, of course, the BDSM people I know from New England, of
Right.
course." Where when I'm in LA, I feel I'm not a big LA person, honestly. I kind
Same.
of avoid it at most costs.
Same. I'm good with all of that. It's too crazy. It takes forever to get anywhere. Like I know that there's opportunities and stuff like that. I've done a little bit of mainstream like
Yeah.
acting as well, film acting, and I know that I would do better in that career too if I spent more time in LA, but I just can't bring myself to do it.
It's just like I know the people who are actually from LA. There's a real community there and real like old school
For sure.
LA things that I really appreciate. But I feel
Right.
like, especially being, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, we have this like view of LA where it's like, oh, it's all vapid, it's all fake. It's
Yeah.
all. Also, I feel like when you're there, you feel like you always have to be working because when you're working in LA, it feels great. You're like,
Mhm.
wow, I'm going on a set right now. I just passed the Hollywood sign.
Right. Yeah.
I'm on a red carpet in Hollywood. Like it feels like the
Yeah.
things that you're like told when you're a kid of what being famous is.
Definitely. Yeah.
But also, I hate being in cars. I hate all that
Hmm.
stuff. When you're not
Same.
doing good in LA, it feels like shit.
Oh yeah, and the rent is so high there.
I mean, I live in San Francisco, so I'm like everywhere feels
That's
cheap to
true.
me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, San
um,
Fran's like one of the only places that's more expensive than Boston.
it's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's the one great thing about it though is when you live here and you travel anywhere, everywhere feels so cheap and you're like, "Oh my God, it's only $3 for a sandwich? A $7 sandwich? That's amazing. Wow, what a deal." Where here
Yeah.
it's like you can't do anything for under like
Yeah. No, really.
$25.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's another reason I don't spend a lot of time there. I can't afford it. Coming out to here to Vegas from New England was definitely a good bit of a life hack for me
Yeah.
because I knew that the cost of living, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, it's that gap is sort of narrowing now and things are sort of
Mm-hmm.
the prices of everything are rising. But pre-pandemic, when I came out here, I was able to just sort of like pick up and start a new life for not very much money. And I'm living
For
in this
sure.
huge, 3-bedroom place with a 2-car garage, a backyard, like all this stuff that I could never
Everything.
ever dream of having in Boston or even in anywhere in Rhode Island.
Yeah, I've been in
You know?
Providence, yeah.
Yeah. So coming out here has been a blessing in a lot of ways, but the same sort of mentality that, we were just talking about in LA applies here too. I always heard people say before I came out here that, the difference between people on the West Coast and people on the East Coast is like, you know, people on the West Coast just sort of they're very flighty. You never really know if they're telling you the truth sometimes or
Mm-hmm.
not, and people put on like a face or a mask. And you know, I guess the grass is always greener because before I got out here, I was like, oh, whatever, I can handle that. That's no big deal. But after 5 years of being out here and just, where I came from, where if somebody tells you something, like their word is their bond,
Yeah.
or you're going to know if someone likes you or not, because if they don't like you, they're not going to be nice to you. They're
Yeah,
not
they're gonna cuss
friendly
you
to
out. They
you.
might try to fight you. Like, you
Exactly.
don't have to worry
Exactly.
about anyone from Boston not being honest with you. It's gonna be
Right.
100% honest.
Right. So that is something that I have come to miss. There are definitely pros and cons of being in each place, but and we're having more and more people from LA sort of migrating here, and that's
For
why the
sure.
price of things is, inflation is happening here. So it's almost like being in a little LA anyway. So I'm not sure if this is going to be someplace that I'm going to be forever. It's been great for my hustle. It's been great for my career, and I mean, it's been good for my mental health in most ways. It's much warmer out here. The cost of living
Mm-hmm.
is much lower than what, I'm used to. So, in a lot of ways, it's been great for my mental health. But in the 5 years that I've been here, I have not really developed very many deep friendships. All of my best friends are back in New England. And that's why I have to go back and visit often because I'm like, you guys feed my soul. I don't have a ride or die out here in
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. And it sucks, because it's like, I'm not the type of person, I do like to be introverted a lot of the time and stay at home and stuff like that. But when I go out, I'm really good about networking and meeting new people. And I like to link up with people. And so I don't think that I have a problem with making new friends, but it's just something different out here.
For
Like
sure.
it's sort of more casual friendship or work friendship type of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have people that I can call up and be like, "Hey, want to go like catch a movie?" Like, although incidentally, I just did that the other day. I went to go see Sonic 3 with a couple of my friends in the industry. Like all of my friends that I hang out here with are in the industry, besides my partner. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's my best friend. That's the best friend that I have out
Yeah.
here. I don't have any other besties, and it's really kind of isolating. Vegas is a very transient place. People come and go a lot. So I've had experiences where I will start to get close to somebody and then they move away. So it's been a really challenging place socially. And the metal scene sucks out here. I'm in a heavy metal band and we came from New England where the scene is actually like pretty decent for that type
Oh,
of
for
music.
sure.
And out here it's just like there's a lot of like cover bands and there's a few like hardcore bands, but there's nobody doing like our type of music out
Yeah,
here.
doing death
So
metal, really.
yeah, so the heavy metal scene out here has been really disappointing as well, and even the kink scene has been disappointing out here. It's super illegal to have a kinky space, like even worse
Yeah.
than Massachusetts, and people out here just don't seem to be that serious, and they don't want like sort of a long-term relationship or to see a provider very often because they have so many other choices. They're like, okay, I'm gonna go drinking or gambling or partying or go to this swingers house or go to this brothel or just call an
Hmm.
escort kind of thing. So, um, in a lot of ways, it's been worse, than what I was coming from, and I've had to adapt my business model a lot. I haven't been able to do that much in-person work anymore, so I've
Hmm.
had to go more online than ever. And so I'm super grateful that I had the foundation for online work because I kind of don't have a lot of choice out here. Even
Yeah.
traveling to LA, it's super competitive. There's tons of DOMs out there. I don't get a lot of clients out there either. So I'm like, okay, unless I want to just be like constantly on tour, I have to get better at just being more present and building my brand on the internet. So that's what I've been doing.
I feel like Vegas is like great for content trade. If you want to
Hmm.
continuously making content, that's
Oh yeah,
terrific. And I
it's
feel
great.
like that's what it's there for. Like, I don't think there's very many other places in the world that have the concentration of porn creators who are always shooting stuff. And I've
Yeah.
actually had a few people on the podcast who are like older in porn. Like I had Stoya on the podcast,
Mm.
and her era of porn was so much in like the aughts where it was like, okay, you sign for a company, you'll have 5 shoots a year, and that's what it is.
Oof.
Where I had to explain to them, be like, yeah, if you want to be a porn star now, you can move to Vegas and be like, I'm just gonna try to commit to this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, that's kind of scary though. I'm like, it is in a way, but in another way, it's like there's so much freedom now
Yeah.
where if you really want to will yourself to be a porn performer and you want to put in the hard work, you probably can.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
at the same time, it's like this whole thing where when you're doing that, you go to Vegas where it's such a transient town. It is affordable, so you can live comfortably,
Hmm.
but there's not this huge other community around it where it's going to be like
No.
all your friends are going to be work friends for the most part, and it's going
Yeah.
to be super based on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You hit the nail on the head. It's like it's great for a couple of very specific things, and you're gonna live really comfortably. But when you go one layer deeper than that, it's just if it falls flat.
For sure. Um, so like, how are you feeling? I mean, it has to be such a different feeling. Like the last person I just talked to, Anna Lings, they're flying from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, to LA and Vegas for AVN, but you're in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel going into AVN week? Because obviously you're gonna be coming back from XBiz, which
Hmm.
knock on wood is happening next week.
Yes.
Obviously, with
Okay.
everything going in LA,
Fingers crossed.
who knows, honestly.
Yeah,
But
my flight's
how?
already booked, so I'm hoping it's still happening. And to be
Yeah,
honest, XBiz is one of my favorite events of the whole entire year. So I'm got my fingers crossed and hopefully it's all gonna be good. But I
so
would say that, you know, I don't want to say that Avian was one of the reasons I moved out to Vegas,
mhm,
but I did. Making that flight every year from Boston was getting to be
mhm.
taxing. It was super expensive, getting lodging super expensive, like, everything. And it was just
It
like
really is.
stressful too, and it's a long flight. So I'd have to come in at least a day early so I could get acclimated to the jet lag and all that. And then I would also feel like I really needed to maximize every possible second because I was spending like 3 grand on going to this event. And now
Yeah.
it's just, it's been it was definitely like one of the things in the list of like reasons why to move to Vegas. Like there's, first of all, we've got like the Grammys of porn happens every year
For
here.
real.
There's also smaller events throughout the year, and we're right next to LA without having to pay LA prices. So being able to be closer to some of the biggest adult conferences of the year was
Hmm.
was definitely a factor. And it is so wonderful, I have to say, living out here during AVM week because there's so much less stress that occurs.
Hmm.
Like I'm just instead of me having to worry about booking flights and packing just the right amount of outfits and everything, I'm just like, oh, okay, what am I going to wear today? Or what am I going to wear on the red
Yeah.
carpet
You
kind of
get to go
thing?
home to your house, sleep in your own bed,
Exactly.
have the whole comfort.
Yeah, it doesn't cost me $1 million to, I can drive in and out if I want to. Maybe one of the days I'll take an Uber or something. And so I don't have to worry about the cost. And also, I no longer feel like I have to be there every moment. Like,
Hmm.
in fact, usually just for my own mental health, I usually skip at least one day where I just don't even go to the floor at all. And being out here with space to shoot in as well, I don't feel as sort of compelled to be on the floor like at all times anyway. I try to find people to collaborate with, be like, hey, you want to come shoot at my place? All right, cool, let's do it. It's a lot easier to set up collabs when I've got my own dungeon here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen, with both of us being in the industry this long, we've seen the shift from everyone being on the convention floor, trying to hustle, trying to get noticed by different companies, all that stuff, to
Hmm.
it completely flipping where a lot of people barely even go to the floor at all anymore because
Hmm.
they're doing content trade every single day. Like there's so many people who
Yeah.
go into AVN week who are like, I'm gonna make a movie this weekend. And they
Yeah.
do. They do 4 scenes. They have a movie, you know?
Right. It's like, the floor is really fun and exciting in short kind of bursts of time because, like, if you break it down, let's say, even if you're a really big star
Hmm.
and you've got a booth spot, like, okay, you're going to make some money from fans coming up to you. They want your autograph, they want pictures, this and
Hmm.
that. But that's kind of like if you're a really big star. And you're probably going to be completely drained after the end of that. And like, how good is the content that you might be able to squeeze in between that? So, would you rather come and like pocket some of that money from the fans or like work on some amazing production that's going to elevate your career?
Yeah.
And on the smaller level too, if you're somebody that's not a big star, someone like me who's more in kind of the mid-tier range, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I might make $100 on the floor like all week selling prints or selling CDs for my band or what have you.
Hmm.
Is it, what's more appealing? Do I want to spend my time doing that and trying to like sell myself to new fans and stuff like that who may or may not even be interested in kink, like
Yeah.
the kink genre? Because let's face it, most of the people that attend these conventions are there to see the mainstream porn people, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean it's kind of like the Grammys, I feel like. Like a lot of people are going for Dua Lipa, a lot of people are going for Beyonce, for
yeah.
Taylor, and then
Yeah.
there's
Who's
everyone else, you
yeah,
know?
like who's going to see the weird goth girl with the shaved head and the blue hair, you know?
Yeah, yeah, who's
Like
going for Knock Loose, you know, or like
yeah, so I think that it's really wise to sort of take these things into consideration as a performer and find a balance. Of course, you want to check out the floor, you want to make some connections. It's exciting, it's good for your portfolio to be there, get some pictures and whatnot. But
Mhm.
I think it's a lot smarter to take advantage of all of the other performers that are flying in from all over the
Yeah.
world and get those dream scenes done.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think it's just like just to take in the whole experience. I think it's just so important. Like I remember
Mhm.
my first year walking around and like I met Joanna Angel my first year and I was just
Nice.
like, "Oh my God, like you're the girl who like put tattoos in porn. That's crazy, you know?"
Yeah.
And just like getting to see all of that was so important, I feel like. And I think especially like our view of it's so different now than people who it's their first year and it's
For
like the
sure.
pinnacle of their whole career so
They're
far.
all walking in all starry-eyed and they're like, wow. this is it. I remember when I felt that way. Those days are long
Yeah.
gone.
I
And I'm
know.
just like, oh, I have to be at a booth this year. What is my schedule? Do
I feel like my
I
thing
have to be
always
here
is
this long?
like if I am not signing or doing a cam session, I'm just like, okay, how do I get my ticket inside the thing where they want me to have a pass to get in? Like that's been my last stress the last few years where I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a good 3 hours trying to talk my way through security and be like, hey,
Mm,
I just need to get one thing, and one person's gonna send me to another person, and then eventually, like,
hmm.
I feel like that's been my big thing the last few years. Because other than that, I'm like, I want to do a few performances. I want to
Nice.
do like the day of, obviously, do the award show, do the red carpet, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
at this point, I feel like I've done signing booths, I've done cam sessions, I've done all
Yeah.
that stuff
You've
where
done it all.
I'm like, I think I am okay now. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the
After a
my
certain point, it's just sort of recycling the same sort of energetic experiences over and over.
for sure. So going back to this year, what were you doing and where were you when you found out? Because I do know on the East Coast you get it kind of late at night. The first time I got nominated was actually in Boston. We were just got back from drinking at like 3 in the morning. It's when I found out my first AVN nomination, and I was at this like super I have a friend who's a soccer player, and she's obviously a lesbian and lives with a bunch of other lesbian bros.
Nice.
So they were all have the thickest Boston accents, and they're like, "This is wicked crazy." I'm like, and like, "You're a porn star now." I'm like, "Oh my God." So where were you this year when you found out?
Well, it's funny if you would ask me that question like most of the years, I would probably have no idea because to me at this point, I don't want to say that I almost expect to get nominated
Yeah.
because that would sound like conceited, but like, I work really fucking hard and I'm very prolific and
Hmm.
I've got a great PR rep and all that
Yeah, you've
stuff.
had a great fucking year. Like,
Thank
I
you.
just see everything you've done this last year, and it's
Yeah,
like nominations fucking everywhere, honestly, it
thank
seems
you.
like.
Thank you. Yeah, I work really fucking hard for all that shit. So sometimes I'm almost, if I don't get something, I'm kind of like, huh, why didn't they see me this year, sort of thing. But this year, I remember where I was because I was super bummed out that I wasn't able to go attend the pre-noms parties this year. They were like back to back XBiz and AVN as they
Hmm.
usually are in LA, like the week before Thanksgiving. And I had already planned on a trip up to LA the week of Thanksgiving to do a couple of really sexy
Hmm.
collabs with a few people. And so I just couldn't swing. They always fucking announce it like so soon before
So
it happens
soon.
too. They'll give us like 2 or 3 weeks notice. I think it was like 2.5 weeks notice this year. And I was like, dude, no, I can't make that happen. I just can't. This sucks, but I can't. So I was super bummed out because I love going to both of those events. They're a lot
Hmm.
of fun. But yeah, I was just chilling at home when I found out. I think the results kind of came out maybe like after midnight or something Pacific
Yeah, it
time.
was right around midnight.
Yeah. And some people just started like texting me and congratulating me. And I was like, oh shit, okay, cool. And I logged into Twitter and I started seeing everything on Twitter because, it's really great because a lot of times like people will just tell me, people will just
Yeah.
text me and be like, hey, congrats, I saw you were nominated, or, I'll find out from Erica or something like that.
Yeah,
But
or you'll get the FaceTime calls, like,
yeah, or somebody will tag me up on Twitter along with whoever else got nominated in the category, and we're all just sitting there congratulating each other. It's a big old
yeah.
love fest, and so yeah, I was at home in Vegas when I found out both about the XBiz noms and the AVN noms. So, needless to say, I was very happy, and I shared the news with my partner right away. And he does all of my video editing, and he manages my clip stores and stuff like that, and my website. So he really busts his ass too. Like I wouldn't be able to do nearly like everything that I do without him. So, it's a win for both of us.
For sure. I think that's like a thing that kind of gets forgotten. So I was talking before we started this podcast about like the narratives that are given to different like artists, like whether it's filmmakers at like the Oscars or musicians at the Grammys or even athletes at the Olympics, like that our partners are here with us for this whole journey.
Mm-hmm.
That us getting nominated is also a reflection of our lives with them,
Mm-hmm. For
and
sure.
they got to be there for all of it.
Yeah.
And in your case, obviously, they're actually working on it as well. But it's
Yeah.
like this whole thing where when you're doing this, and like for me, everything I got nominated for has been the last 2 years of work,
Mm.
where you can really like look at parts of your life and be like, oh, that is this era of my life,
Yeah,
and like really
definitely.
view it as the thing that both of you were really there for.
Yeah. And on what is it? I guess it's coming up geez, today's Sunday. It's gonna be next Sunday. He's gonna be right there with me on the XBiz red carpet.
Aw.
So I'm pretty excited for that.
I love that so much. Yeah, that's always
Yeah.
such a treat when you get to have your partner there with you and really take
Yeah.
it all in. And I feel
Yeah.
like porn can feel like such a boring job at times because
Right.
you're editing your own stuff. You might have one shoot where you're traveling for it and then you're getting back and your partner's only seeing maybe
Mm-hmm.
a small part of what you're doing. And I
Yeah.
feel like it can feel very boring. And then you have these moments like AVN and XBiz where you're like, oh, wow, this is a really real thing.
Hey.
There's people from all over
Yeah.
the world here.
Like, look, this thing that we've been doing sort of like culminated into this awesome moment right here. This is our time to shine.
For real. I think that's so
Yeah.
special. And I think it's just that like AVN has been going, and this is a 43rd year of it.
Wow. I didn't
And
even
that,
realize that.
yeah, that is just like this thing that we get to be part of this legacy that people are going to look
Amazing.
back at in,
So
50
cool.
years or whatever. And it's also crazy to think, there's been more AVNs than Olympics.
What?
Yeah, that's
Really?
crazy, right? Yes.
I had no idea. That's shocking. I thought the Olympics would have been going on for much longer. It seems like it. Wow.
Yeah, right? Crazy.
That's so
I mean, I guess it has been
wild.
going longer, but like it's only once every 4 years, so I guess that is the difference. But still, though,
There's
like
been many
that,
more AVNs.
yeah, which is crazy because
That's
I
wild.
feel like the way people look at porn is very much, oh, it's just, whatever, not
Yeah.
long standing and stuff. So,
Hmm. That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that we both got to be part of this legacy for,
Yeah,
nearly
no,
a
it's such an
decade.
honor. Yeah. The very first time I ever got to walk the red carpet, this was before, do you remember like when the only way you could be walking the red carpet was to receive a nomination from AVN itself?
I didn't know that was specifically a thing.
Yeah, so in
I'm
more
I'm I'm
recent
not trying
years,
to sound full of myself. I'm like every year I win, I was nominated. So. I'm like I don't know.
no, that's legit. So there was a time where the only way you could walk that red carpet was if you received an
Hmm.
AVN nomination, not a fan nomination, not like
Huh.
because My Free Cams was there, because when they started sponsoring it in a bigger way, like there's a little baby red carpet now for any active MFC model to just like be on. So it's really kind of a thing that's not even that difficult to attain anymore.
Yeah.
But the first year that I got nominated, I think was like the last year that sort of thing applied, where that was the only way to get on the carpet was to be busting your fucking ass and making really good high quality content and
Yeah.
doing your scene work and just being exceptional. So when I got that very first one, like I was on cloud nine for like months afterward.
Yeah.
That just made me feel so accomplished and so recognized just to be on that carpet. I wasn't like, oh my God, I wonder if I'm gonna win. Because I'm like, there's probably no way in hell I'm gonna win like my first year. But I was just so happy to be there and be on that carpet in that time when it was like, okay, you have to be exceptional to be on that carpet.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to say that now it's like you don't have to be exceptional to be on the carpet, but it's also just a lot easier to be on the carpet
Yeah.
now.
I think it's more open now, but I also feel like the industry as a whole is a lot more open and there's just
Yeah.
more people involved. And I think it's a good thing that EVN's getting bigger every year.
Hmm.
You're having more categories, you're having more people included. I think it's a
Yeah.
really great thing.
There's a lot of people that get nominated in the fan nominated stuff too now, so that's pretty cool.
But I think that's great. Like, I think it's awesome that they have these other categories where it's like 10 people and it's like very limited.
Hmm.
But I also think it's great that they have something like Cam Performer where it's like, okay, these are the 50 top cam girls. Here you
Right.
go. You
Or, I
know?
mean, in your case with the Best Adult Podcast, that was super cool.
Yeah, that's it's this is meta because we're on the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, it's an AVN
talking
thing, but
about talking about it being nominated for this thing
yeah,
we're about to be at. That's so badass. Like huge congrats on that. I was really happy
thanks.
to see you on there and just to see that category on there too. It shows that
Yeah.
they're adapting with, the current times because podcasts have sort of exploded over the last few years and that wasn't even if you had said something like that a few years ago, like it would have almost been kind of like laughable. Like, no, why would
Mhm.
we include podcasts on that? But they're just sort of widening the net now, which is great.
I think it's really great. I think it's just so cool that there's so many people doing it with so many different takes on it, and we're hearing so many things from different performers. Like, I can't remember what podcast it was on, but Sasha Grey went on a podcast recently and talked about her career and like how she viewed her career as really being an athlete. And that's like spoke to me
Yeah,
so much where I'm like,
that's a
that's
great
really a great
analogy.
point because it's
Yes.
so much, especially if you're doing really extreme porn, such as like BDSM and stuff, there's
Yeah,
so much athleticism that goes into it.
there really
That both
is.
as a sub and a dom, where you have to be
Yeah.
able to do these things that might be really extreme and crazy looking that the average person can't do, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. I mean, fucking is hard work, like I've
Yeah.
been doing a lot more pegging scenes this last year and I'm like, wow, this is like, this is some serious cardio after going for like a certain amount of time. You're just like, whoo, okay, hang on, I need a break. I've got like a cramp in my leg. Like,
Yeah, I was a sub in a public disgrace scene this year, and
oh
that
my
was
God,
like,
that's amazing. I want to
yeah.
know all about it. I
Yeah,
love public
I'll totally
humiliation.
send it to you.
Oh,
So
yes.
obviously, as you know, Kink stopped shooting it.
Mm.
So Princess Anna on her own literally got the lights from the armory that other people had still and
Oh,
like
nice.
arranged it completely on her own. And I
Oh,
felt like I got into like a 5 round like fight because it was like 90
right.
full minutes of the entire scene. We shot for like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And it was like, if I was not at the gym, there's no way I could have
Yeah.
physically made it through that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you just brought up. Like if you're not in shape, you're not going to perform as well. And as we start to get older, it becomes even more important to
For
maintain
sure.
that because it's so easy to lose that. Like if you're not doing it for a couple weeks or something, and then you go back in, you're just like, oof, okay, like this is really difficult. And for me as a vocalist, it's the same thing. I
Hmm.
my one of my coaches or teachers used to tell me like you have to consider yourself as an athlete. You're a vocal athlete.
Yeah.
You have to watch what you're putting in your body. You have to maintain the right number of hours of sleep every night. You have to make smart choices about, if you're going to these parties or what you're doing. If you've got a scene or something, you've got to perform the next day. And, you've got to stay in shape. You've got to do your calisthenics and stuff when you're not performing. Otherwise, like it's not going to go well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really the thing from that podcast I heard with Sasha Grey, where she's like, you're an athlete, you're not a rock star. You can't go out and party every night and be a top
Hmm.
porn performer and be able to perform your best
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
not how it works. Your body
Yeah.
is your.
Yeah, it's your instrument, it's your tool. People are looking at it, people are hearing it, and
Hmm.
got to keep it in top shape. And
For
that's
sure.
why, it's almost kind of cruel that, these conferences, they schedule fucking parties like, each night almost. Like they have these after parties and but then they have the speed networking conference at like, 10 a.m. the next day. And
Yeah.
how are we supposed to do both of these things and not look completely haggard the next day? Like, you guys are mean. Like, give us a break. Like,
I feel like you really can't do it all. I've never actually stayed at the hotel where it's ever
the host
been
will tell you it's a
because
bad idea.
I
You're
need to
not going to
have
sleep.
space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to
I've
sleep either.
always stayed somewhere on the strip a little far away where I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I can be a porn star, do that whole thing for a while and then
yeah.
leave and be like, okay,
Some
be anonymous
separation,
enough, you know?
unplug a little bit. Yeah, and my sort of strategy now is I might skip one of the parties. I'll make sure I go to one, but I'm gonna show up early, looking really fine, and get all my fucking pictures taken, and then I'm gonna leave
Yeah.
within the hour. And so that's how I show up on time for the shit the next day looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And it's just like, I mean, I'm not that much of a drinker or a partier anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what am I gonna do? Just like sit around and drink a bunch of sugary cocktails that are gonna be bad for my body and make me look all bloated? Like, nah, I'm good with that.
Yeah. And then meet someone who it's like their I feel like there's the range with AVN, it's either their first award show and they're like, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
wasted because it's my first one.
And they go
Or
hard.
or they're like, it's my 25th and I've been in the industry since like
And
1980 and
I'm
they're
going to
like,
bed.
or no, or they're like, I'm going extra hard. Where you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I just love that range of people you meet there where it's like
Yeah.
especially in the last few years, I've like heard so many different languages at AVN, and I feel like
Hmm.
become so much more international. Where I'm like, oh, I met someone who's from Africa. I met someone from Australia. Oh, I met
Yeah.
someone who's from Japan.
It's
Like
amazing.
it's just
Yes.
so wide.
Yes,
Where
I've been
compared,
meeting some Japanese performers at the last couple events I attended as well. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. It's not very often that you see performers from Japan coming over here, and like that's I'm always just sitting there kind of like interviewing them. I'm like, oh, like what is it like doing this, or like what's the trends over there right now, and
Mhm.
they'll pull up stuff on their phones that's just absolutely wild that like we've never seen shit like that before. Like the last XBiz conference I went to this past summer over in Amsterdam, um,
Mhm.
there was a Japanese performer there, and she was showing me some kind of genre. And of course, like there was a language barrier too. So
Yeah.
she was, we were just sort of trying to communicate with each other.
Hmm.
But then she pulled up this type of porn that actually was very beautiful. I don't know how exactly they do this stuff, but like they're just like covered in all this different color, like what looked like, I don't know, slime or goopy
Hmm.
paint or something. And it was beautiful. I mean, I was just like, this is really like art. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and it was weird, but it was gorgeous, and it's just like, super messy. And I'm like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. And she was like, oh, this is one of the top categories, like, this past year. And I'm like, wow, I want to do some shit like this.
I think that's like the coolest thing about AVN is you meet people from places you never assume they were making stuff, and you find people making stuff you didn't even know exist. And
Hmm.
even if you've been in the industry for as long as us, like nearly a decade, like you still just learn so much every single year. And I
Yeah.
think it just makes you realize how vast the industry is.
Yeah. It's mind blowing. I also didn't know before talking to there were a couple of Japanese performers there, and I was talking to this guy about his work, and he does mainstream, and he's like, yeah, it's a little different because we have to pixelate.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they had to pixelate like the private parts. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that must be really like challenging to kind of, like
Hmm.
it's it. But I mean, obviously they're doing well over there. Like porn is still porn. It's still a thriving industry, but it's like, wow, like that's how it gets released over there with pixelation. That's just
Do
wild
you
to me.
know why that is?
No, I don't.
It's really interesting. So, I have a few Japanese friends who are in the industry. Um, And I stayed with one of them for a while and we were like talking about all this stuff. So when Japan surrendered in World War II, Eisenhower was president. And he was running for re-election and he couldn't get like the conservative religious base in middle America and like Missouri and stuff. So they purposely tried to tailor the new Japanese constitution to conservative values. And that was one of the specific things is you could
Huh.
not show genitals entering each other. And
Huh.
that was a thing that was written into the Japanese constitution, but that's why BDSM porn is like amazing there because they
Oh.
had to find other ways
Mhm.
to depict sexuality.
Yeah.
So my hot
Wow.
take is, have you been to Japan before?
I have not yet. It's on my bucket list whenever I can afford to go there.
You definitely should go and go to like the sex shops there because the BDSM porn there's so much better than here because that's
Really?
like one of the main categories.
Okay.
Also, when you go into a store, they have mannequins with the rope from the actual scenes signed by both
Wow.
the rigger and the girl who was in the bondage.
That's super cool.
And it's just like so different and so far beyond what we have. But
Wow.
also, like the Japanese porn scene has really changed since the pandemic because
Mhm.
before the first time I went, it was in 2017. and I hung out with my friend, and she had some friends who were in like the Japanese porn scene. But back then, it was very much these five companies ran the industry. You
Mm.
signed for these five companies. It was
Hmm.
very much how it used to be in LA, where you're very much a contract performer. You're through one of four companies, right?
Hmm.
So after the pandemic hit, that's when mini vids and like OnlyFans really hit there, and the Japanese rewrote their tax code to be like, oh, we're gonna allow some more like independent contractor sort of stuff. So now there's a bunch of porn performers making stuff on their own in Japan and able to sell it on their own as opposed to waiting for big industry stuff. So the whole
Hmm.
industry is essentially opened up there.
Nice. It's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like this whole other world, but I think once America the American and Western porn world finds out about all the Japanese porn and it starts getting nominated for stuff, I think they're gonna completely own the BDSM categories for like decades. It's just so much higher
Wow.
quality. And as someone who's nominated in the best BDSM category this year, I'm
Yeah.
just like, it's just such a different level, honestly.
Wow. I'm gonna have to take a peek. Thanks for the heads up. Maybe I can get some inspiration.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. That's awesome. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. Also, I think like the level of it there is like it's such a like the sex stores there are just so massive. Like
Hmm.
I've gone to multiple that are like five, six floors of just sex
Wow. They're just
toys.
like
And
porn malls.
yeah, there's
That's awesome.
also this do you know Don Quixote?
No.
There's one in Hawaii too. So it's their like big stores. So they have like groceries on one section. The next floor they'll have like electronics. The next floor they'll have like costumes,
Huh.
hardware stuff, and they have an entire floor just for sex toys. And this
Wow.
is just a normal store there.
Wow, that's so cool. So it's
Yeah.
like, our equivalent of maybe going to like a grocery store almost or something like that.
Maybe like a old school Sears if Sears also had groceries,
Yeah, yeah.
where it was just like an
Wow.
everything store and it's
That's
just
so
like
cool.
yeah, it's a really
Wow.
cool experience. And
Wow.
yeah, I think seeing more performers from Asia and just that porn getting more representation, I think that's going to be really the future of the industry.
That's so cool. Yeah, I made my first trip over to Asia this past year. I had wanted to go to the Philippines for years and years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've had a couple of personal assistants from the Philippines for years now, so I always thought it'd be cool to visit them. I heard that Manila had an amazing heavy metal scene, and
Hmm,
also I found out about a femdom event that was happening in Manila, which we're so kind of geographically far away from them, like that
for
stuff
sure.
doesn't float into our feeds too often and stuff. So I had no idea that there was like a thriving, like pretty decently sized femdom community over there. So last October, I kind of wrapped everything into one. I decided to go. The event was during October, which is my birthday month, and I'm like, cool, I can make this into a birthday trip then. And I met up with one of my assistants and booked two shows with my band. And so I spent 2 weeks there, just immersed in the Philippines, and it was super cool. And it was amazing to meet these Asian doms out there. They were so skilled, so talented, so beautiful, so elegant and
Hmm.
refined. And just like I was just if I was like, a cartoon character, I'd just be walking around with little heart eyes. I was like, wow, I'm like in love with all of you.
It's
It
just,
was so cool.
it's just so genuinely amazing where I feel like sometimes the sex industry and sex work can feel so small.
Yeah.
And but then like when you go around the world, you see that's this huge
Yeah.
thing that isn't just you or
Yeah.
just your like little community. And I think that's so special. Like the movie that I've nominated for best BDSM, like one scene we shot in the Netherlands, one scene I shot in Korea, and then
Wow.
one scene here. So like that it's
Amazing.
just like, oh wow, I could go to a sex store in Korea, get a bunch of gear, and then use it for a scene, and then it gets nominated for this. It's just like truly crazy,
Wow.
you know?
That's so awesome. Yeah, I love taking things international whenever I can.
Yeah, I think that's like such a special part of avian and just like the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, what really made this year special for you? Because obviously you've had a lot of success this year. What did it kind of look like overall?
Let's see. I think the beginning of the year started off a little slow. After con season, I kind of go into a little like mini hibernation because
Mhm.
as you know, it's a lot. So,
It
you
is a
got to
lot.
recoup after that. It takes me sometimes weeks to reacclimate after all of that and sort of catch up too, because every day you're at the events, you're not kind of like there with your fans. Like I'm not
Yeah, you're
streaming.
surrounded by people.
Yeah, I'm not streaming, I'm not chatting on, my fan clubs or anything like that. And so it takes some time to sort of reconnect with people and rebuild those connections that suffer a little bit when we're not, physically present for our fan base.
Hmm.
Um, but then I started going back to the East Coast a little bit and getting a lot of streaming done. It was a good year for me on Streamate. I got a
Hmm.
couple of new models kind of signed up and interested in streaming with me.
Hmm.
So I did that was a theme that sort of persisted a lot throughout this whole year was me doing a lot of good collabs with streaming and finding some awesome people to vibe out with. So it's been a really good year for my streaming career. And I started buckling down more and doing more scene work again, whereas I had kind of the previous year I'd been focused a little bit more on my band, on my music stuff, and on writing because I've been doing sort of written content now. I've been doing
Hmm.
ebooks and guides and stuff like that. And I started getting a little bit more into like YouTube content, like how-to kind of stuff. And I have an online talent agency that focuses on streaming. So for a little while, I was really wrapped up with doing that stuff. But then this past year, I kind of shifted my focus back into my own adult content creation. And I met a lot of great, great people this past year through either events. I met a couple of great people at FetishCon this past year. And either through events or just them contacting me, being in Vegas or me going to
Hmm.
LA or something. So I met some really good scene partners that I've been really prolific with this past year and just banging out a whole bunch of scenes and making sure my websites, my fan clubs, and my clip stores are all just like, being really consistent with good
Hmm.
content, keeping them updated. This past year, I also started my own chatting agency because the previous year I had worked for one of the biggest OnlyFans agencies in the world.
Hmm.
And I basically took that job so I could learn their secrets.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna put that right out in the open. If you want to know how to run a really strong fan club, like go like become a hired chatter for an agency and you will learn so much stuff.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. So this year, starting in January, I just, I didn't even really advertise it too much publicly. I just started reaching out to a couple of my Dom friends that I knew have been super busy.
Hmm.
And I got yeses from the ones I asked. I was just, I'm a little bit like shy when it comes to trying to pitch stuff for people or like asking for things from people. So I was a little bit out of my comfort zone, sort of like trying to pitch myself as a service in this way directly to people. But it went well. It was well received. And so now I'm doing a chatting agency just for femdoms because of the OnlyFans agencies out there. Most of them don't even know what loyal fans is. They don't
Mm.
have any idea of how to talk to fetishists, like real fetishists. It was funny because in the chatting agency I worked for, like they would give the more kind of kinky accounts to me because I was one of the only people who knew how to get the money like out of the fans the same way because the other chatters were just kind of blowing it. They were like, what well, like what is giantess or how do I handle this guy
Yeah.
asking for this really weird thing? And I'm like,
You know about all
hey,
the weird fetishes.
right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know exactly how to handle that. Like, let me take that one over, kind of thing. So I started offering the service at XBiz last year
Hmm.
because I know that there's nobody doing that. It's a
Yeah,
gap in the market. If you are a femdom, especially a high protocol femdom, like there's going to be like no chatting agency is going to be able to help you. And
for sure.
excuse me, one of my the people that I do work for now, who's become a friend of mine, I watched one of the chatting agencies completely butcher her fan club, her OnlyFans.
Mm.
She lost some really, really big whales, because people just the chat team completely botched the interactions and they knew it wasn't her. So, and that's really easy for a regular OnlyFans agency to do with anything that's sort of like niched down like that. They're
Yeah,
not going to know about BDSM protocol, or
definitely not.
the way to get into like a fin sub's head or a hypno dude or something. Like they just have no idea and they're going to botch it. So, I'm very confident in that. Almost none of the fans have ever like noticed, like I've had one or two over the thousands in the entire year be like,
Hmm.
is this really like so and so? Because like we were talking, it was more because they had some sort of specific relationship that I didn't know all the nuances about,
Um,
but they didn't know it wasn't the dom because of the way I was speaking or the way I was acting. Like it was, it was all very, very successful and continues to be. So I'm really proud of myself for that.
it's
And that has
amazing.
been a nice chunk of extra income. I try to vary my income streams. I have like 4 or 5 different regular income streams. And I
Hmm.
think that that's really the key to being independent, being an
Yeah,
independent performer and a freelancer and stuff. You got to have your different income streams because things ebb and flow so much, as you know. So
yeah. I mean, as much as it's great to have a cam day where you make $100 or $500 in 20 minutes. There's
yeah.
also days where you might be on cam for 4 hours and make
And
fucking
make nothing.
nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I think the highs and lows are all part of it. And I think a lot of people just assume it's all one way, and it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. There's so many people who kind of, they dip their toe in and they're expecting to make a bunch of money right away. And when they don't, they give up on it. Or sometimes what happens is they'll sort of get lucky right away and they'll start making money right away. But then inevitably that lull period comes in and they're like, oh no, like what's going wrong? And it's kind of like, hey, it's because that new performer tag wore off.
Yeah. I also
Like
think it's just like all versions of the entertainment industry, you're gonna have highs and lows, and it's about
yeah.
maintaining during those, even though it's hard and mentally draining and all of that.
Yeah.
But so what would winning mean to you this year? I mean, you're nominated in 2 categories. Like Femdom would be fucking amazing, right?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
that's crazy.
That would be a dream come true. I've been coveting an AVN award for, my entire career.
For
It's
real.
like it's kind of the only one I haven't gotten yet. Um,
Same.
I know that it's not purely fan based, and I know that there's some politics behind it and stuff like that. So I try not to get my hopes up too much. I've also seen kind of like what type of physical appearance that the people who have won favorite Dom of the year and AVN
Hmm.
like have received before, and like I look nothing like that. You know what I mean? I am completely like I have a very niche down look. I'm very alternative. I'm very sort of like androgynous a lot of the times. And I feel like, people who win in that category are traditionally like very, very blonde, super busty, or like I think there was a brunette that won last year, but like, just very feminine, and I I try not to get my hopes up too high. I hope that one day I can be officially recognized for some of my scene work,
Mm.
because I put a lot into my scenes and I like to think I'm a good performer. So, the favorite Dom one would be cool and all, but just sort of based on who's won it in the past, I don't really see that one going to me anytime soon. And plus, some of the other nominees have way bigger fan bases than me, but I would love to be recognized for my scene work one day. Maybe win for a specific scene or something like that. That would be winning to me. And then
Do you know how many nominations you've had total at AVN so far?
for just AVN, I think it's been maybe like 10 or so.
It's
For a while, I
amazing.
was counting all of my, XBiz, AVN, Why Not, Fetish Con. It's
Yeah.
it's it's over it's well over 50 by now. And I
Hmm.
have, I've won like quite a few of those over the years, which is incredible. You know, winning my
Yeah, it's
first
nice to have some
award.
trophies in your house and be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay.
I've got a whole little shelf to just remind myself on days when I'm not having the best day in the world, like, hey, you got this. Like you did that shit and other people saw it. Other people
Y-
recognize it. So it's all good kind
Yeah,
of
I
thing.
especially feel for friends and family back home. Once you get one, they're like, "Oh my God, you made it," you know? Where
It's
it's
so fun.
like, yeah, like my grandma doesn't know the difference between a why not and an AVN, but they're like,
Yeah,
"You went to Hollywood and you won an award
right.
and you
Yeah.
got to go on stage, like that's crazy."
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like, well, no, you know, some months I struggle to like pay for all my stuff that I need to
Yeah.
anyway, or like, you know, I think the most common misconception that I get, and this has been going on ever since I became a touring musician,
Hmm.
and you know, we started posting like, you know, Sorrow Seed tours all over the country or
Hmm.
in Europe or whatever, and people see that big flyer with all the dates on it. They're just like, "Wow, like you're a real rock star now. Like you've made it. Oh my God, that's so cool. I get to say I know you." And I'm like, you know, we're losing money on this tour.
Yeah.
We work with, you know, we booked all of these dates ourselves. Not all of them are going to be awesome. Or maybe I booked with a booking agent this year and like, you know, we're getting paid something, but like that doesn't mean that, you know, we're suddenly at this huge elevated status that people think. And I think that a lot of people sort of look at awards as the same thing. It's like, yeah, awards are super cool, but do they help us pay our bills? Do they help us really gain a whole bunch of more fans or what? Not really. It gives us something to put on our resume and it's a little bit of clout, like maybe to some companies. Maybe
Yeah.
it leads to you getting booked for something like bigger,
Hmm.
but like at the end of the day, it's it's a
It
trophy
doesn't
on a shelf.
necessarily give
Yeah.
you a bunch of anything.
Yeah,
Like you're
it's a
not a
trophy on a
millionaire
shelf.
now.
You know, it gets dusty, it needs to get wiped down, you know, like once in a while. And it's just it's really pretty and it's amazing to be recognized by the industry professionals and all that. But it doesn't, you know, it doesn't affect your bottom line in any way.
Yeah, it's very funny when people assume if you're known online that you're wealthy and stuff. Where I had someone online who's like, "Well, you're a millionaire." I'm like,
Oh,
I am not anywhere close to
wow.
that.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah, for sure. I remember this one time, a girl back in New England, we had filmed a scene together, and it was like her first scene. We just did like a trampoline thing. It was pretty basic,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh look, like it sold a couple times, you know. And she was trying to become a content creator, so we just like did it for trade. And
Mhm.
at one point, she was like, she came back around. She was like, hey. Like I know that video has been selling like really well. Like, would you mind like kicking me some of that money? And I was like, well, sure, but I mean, it's made $24.
Yes.
Like if you want, I can Venmo you $12, but and then she was just kind of like, "Oh." Like you could see, you know, you could see
Yeah.
the wheels, the gears turning and like, you know, like I think people think that we make thousands of dollars for every single clip we make. It's just not the case.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing about this industry is keeping your overhead low.
Hmm.
So you can make money back on projects. Like I'm really glad I've never lost any money on any projects, but that's not because, oh my God, I'm selling $20,000 of sales on a movie. You know, it's like, oh, you find a way to make movies that look good for a price that actually works, then, you know,
Yeah.
it's okay to wait a minute to make your money back.
Right. Yeah, it's you know, like I tell everybody else who's sort of trying to get into the industry, like if you're expecting a big ass return, a big payday right away, content is not the way to do it. If you do want that, like try dancing, try going to a strip club.
Yeah.
That those are the only occasions where unless I was like paid for you know, a scene, which, you know, that can be a nice few bucks here and
Yeah.
there. The only other times I've just been able to be like, hey, I need an extra like chunk of cash right now. Like, you know, I've gone out to the strip club and then walked out with, you know, pocket full of bills. But that's kind of the only exception I feel like. And
Hmm.
hey, you know, maybe that was just because I was new at that club. If I went in there night after night, I probably wouldn't have had the same luck.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do content, you're gonna have to wait months for a return sometimes. And
For
it's going to be
sure.
like a slow climb most of the time, unless you put something that is so absolutely fire because you've got a combination of great production, great editing, great co-stars, like all of that stuff. There was one clip I put out last year that was my top selling clip of the year. It was me
Hmm.
and two others that were all equally sort of high in visibility.
Hmm.
And we had some great editing and great lighting. And that clip blew up and that was great. But like, that's not something that just happens every time I make.
Yeah, it's not every single scene.
Yeah, it would be great if it worked that way, but and that
Um,
took so much time to organize and set up. I think that's the other thing people don't realize, like especially when they're first trying to set up collabs, like nobody realizes how difficult it is just to simply get people in the room at the same time that are going
for
to show
real.
up, that are not going to space on getting their tests, like that are not going to get sick, and then like
Yeah.
it's making all of that magic happen. Like it's a lot of effing work.
Hmm. So let's say it's 11:30 on AVN night and you win. What's the celebration plan?
Oh, probably invite some of my best friends back to my dungeon and fucking, grab some champagne and have, spend the night in the jacuzzi with all of them.
Oh my God, you have a jacuzzi?
I
Damn.
do,
You're
yeah.
prepared.
Yeah, hey, if you want to come decompress after one of the nights, hit me up because I'm planning
Yeah.
on doing that on most
I'll
of the.
definitely let my partner know about that because I'm
Yeah,
sure there'll
please
be some
do. Come on
interest. Yeah.
over. We've got this big old studio and that's what it's there for. We want to, invite our friends over to
Yeah,
make content but
definitely.
also just hang out.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess if I win, I guess that's gonna be part of my celebration plan too.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, let me know. I
I'm
am
like, yeah,
super down.
let's see at
Yes.
the end of the show, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I'm like, if that happens, we're recording a podcast in the hot tub with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
champagne afterwards for
Hell
sure.
fucking yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
stream in there all the time.
it's
Do
amazing.
my hot tub
So,
streams. I mean, we can do that regardless of whether or not either of us wins also. Like we can just
yeah,
plan to go chill
that's
in the hot tub.
definitely talk about future collabs in the future because I
Yes,
really adore
please.
your work and everything.
Yeah.
But so I have one final question. This is my
Okay.
only kind of out there question. Let's say you wake up tomorrow and one thing could magically change in porn. What would you have it be?
Hmm. That's a good one. I would say that Visa and MasterCard would just let us do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
If we want to fist people, pee on people, like, cut people, like make them bleed, whatever, like whatever we want to do. And it's all okay and it's never bannable.
Yeah, that'd be
That would be
terrific.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can everyone find you on socials and anywhere else?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an awesome,
Yeah,
fun chat. So the easiest place to find me is goddesslilith.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at goddesslilith66. I am shadow banned, so you gotta type it in there.
we
I
all
have,
are, you know?
yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I do a lot of how-to videos on how to, do things like various different little things in the industry, like stream or, do your fan club stuff. That's goddess_Lilith. And you can find my band Sorrow Seed on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all that stuff. And you can follow us on social. Just go to sorrowseed.com and you'll see all the links there. And we are doing a bunch of tours this year all over the US and in Europe. So if you want to come out and rock out with us, make sure you follow our pages on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff and watch for our tour schedules.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and best of luck on Saturday in Vegas.
Yes, thank you.